Right now, we're listening to Ruth Crawford Seeger's String Quartet, written in 1931. Now keep in mind that this was written in a time when female composers were expected to write music that was pleasing to the ear, like lullabies and parlor songs. This music would be included in conversation with her contemporaries like Berg, Webern, and Schoenberg, composers whose music was tonally extreme compared to the expressionism and impressionism that was happening at the same time. The first movement is a sonata, but not in the European sense, where the form is structured by harmonic area. Rather, we have the presence of an exposition, development, and recapitulation, and all of this is evident in the melodic line that continues almost uninterrupted through the entirety of the movement. We have two ideas, one of a flowing lyrical melody, and a second idea of a jaunting, agitated counter melody. If you're listening closely, you can hear these two ideas speaking to each other and weaving in and out of the texture. There's one more indication that I should point out. Seeger notates marcato bruscamente multiple times throughout this movement, which can be interpreted as suddenly rough and blunt. I point this out not only because of its importance in achieving the desired effects of this piece, but also because if you Google marcato bruscamente, you will find multiple articles specifically about this piece. Let's take a listen to the beginning one more time and listen for the lyrical melody passing from one voice to the next, the frantic counter melody arguing with the main theme, and the execution of the marcato bruscamente. Before we dive into listening to the second movement, I want to guide your ears and your eyes to listen and look for the imitation and counterpoint that she has written. The melodic idea is linked from one voice to the next via the counterpoint, and it continues that way for the entirety of the movement. These first two movements are free of any sort of mathematical structuring. We will notice the complete opposite with the next two movements. Seeger called this movement a sort of counterpoint of crescendi and diminuendi. What she meant by that is, if you can imagine actual counterpoint, the goal is for one voice to move while another is steady, and then when that moving voice stops, the other voice starts to move. Seeger does the same thing with the crescendi and diminuendi. For example, if one voice were crescendoing on beat 1, another voice will crescendo on beat 3. That first voice that was crescendoing on beat 1, it will start to diminuendo on beat 4, and that other voice will start to diminuendo on the next beat 1. Let's listen to this beautifully haunting movement 3. Movement 4 has some really cool aspects to it. The primary voice enters with one single note, then rests, and then 2 notes, then 3 and 4, and so on until the melodic line is 20 notes. Now guess what makes that even more awesome? The accompanying voices do the exact opposite, starting with 20 and ending with 1. This movement is an exercise of the 10-tone row with 10 different appearances. And movement 4 is full of contradicting statements. Just as the primary voice started with 1 and then went to 20, as the accompaniment went from 20 and then went to 1, the primary voice begins at the high point of the dynamic spectrum and moves to pianissimo, and the accompaniment starts at pianissimo and then moves to forzando. Imagine the craft, artistry, musicianship, and creativity that it took to compose this piece. Now, let's listen to a little bit of the beginning of movement 4. This piece marked a high point in Seeger's career as an avant-garde composer. She would not return to that path again until 1952, but unfortunately by then, she was fatally affected by cancer. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, or at least learned something to engage your mind and creativity. Now please let me know what you think, especially if you have any comments or suggestions for later videos. Thank you.